Good evening. My name is Jason Zdamski. I'm the director of the Vanguard Academy. I try to catch everybody at the door, introduce myself real fast, so if I missed you, I apologize. Before we begin, I want to introduce our team real quick to you before we dive into the content of this evening. And so they're going to come up, and we're going to kind of just introduce them real fast. So first, we have Mr. Cody Pratt. Mr. Cody Pratt is the lead innovation teacher for Broken Arrow. We have Mrs. Emily Lim. She's the district STEM specialist. And then we have Mrs. Amy Stecker, who's the MVP, most valuable person on our team. So this is kind of the Vanguard Academy team right now. We actually interview people in about 2 weeks to add on to it, which is pretty exciting. So we're excited to share with you Vanguard Academy this evening. And we'll kind of get started just to kind of give you an outline of what to expect over the next 4 hours. I'm just kidding. Over the next 45 minutes-ish, what to expect. So we have 3 program options, 1 full-time, or 2 full-time, 1 part-time. We're going to kind of just cover some details that we do a little bit differently than a traditional school. And as we share these programming options with you, we're going to kind of pause after each program and give a couple minutes for questions. Then we'll move on to the next part as well. We're also streaming this one tonight, and it'll be recorded for people. So we're going to try to make sure we have a pretty good pace and don't go too fast. And so that's kind of the flow. At the end of the night, we're gonna stop. We'll kind of give you 3 steps that you can take next. You have 3 kind of options. One option is to kind of spread out in the room and come and chat with one of us and ask questions if you have some questions. One option is email me and we'll set up a phone call if we need to have a deeper conversation. And the third option is go and apply. So we'll connect back to that when we're done. So let's talk about Vanguard Academy. And Vanguard Academy is going to be more than a school. And when I say more than a school, I have a story to share with you. It's of a student named Ahmed Mohammed. Ahmed is this kid on the right of your slide. And when the pandemic hit last March and they shut down schools, Ahmed was a senior at Oakland Technical High School right outside San Francisco. And his job became babysitting his elementary little cousins, a female-male cousin. That was his job when the pandemic hit. And so he was a really good science student, and he was trying to think of stuff to keep his little cousins entertained. And so one day he was like, dude, we're going to do science. So he went to his cousins. He said, hey, y'all, today we're going to do science. And his female cousin went, no. And his male cousin was like, come on, man. He goes, you guys don't like science? They were like, no, we hate science. Ahmed was like, man, I want to fix that. So he put his little cousins in the car, and they went to the store. They bought a couple nails and some wire and a potato. And they went back to Ahmed's house, and they built a little battery out of that stuff. And when they were done, he said, what do y'all think of science now? They were like, that was actually kind of cool. So from that experience, it gave Ahmed an idea. And when school opened back up, him and a friend went to a teacher, and they said, hey, we have this idea. We want to create a nonprofit that sells science kits to elementary kids in our area to get them more engaged with science. So they started a nonprofit called Kids Cubed, and since the pandemic started, they've sold over 2,000 kits to elementary kids in the San Francisco Bay Area. Pretty awesome story. So we tell you that story because that's the impact we're going to have with Vanguard Academy. We want to be more than a school. We want to make Broken Arrow and the world a better place to live, work, play, and go to school. All right, so let's talk about this facility. This facility was part of a 2015 bond package, and so now we're like in phase 2 or phase 3, and they were building, it was tagged a STEM facility at that time, and it's morphed into now what we call Vanguard Academy, and it was part of that 2015 bond issue. It's a state-of-the-art building. We used a really cool process to design it. It was a charrette process with students, staff, and architects. They kind of designed the building to be modern, and it's a really cool place, so we're excited to share it with you. It holds about 400 students max, so when you hear that number 400 students max, it's a smaller facility. You can almost think of Vanguard building as just like a very, very tiny, like micro high school almost. It's just a very small facility to serve students differently. We're excited to share this with you. I'm going to fast forward, and there's a video here, so I'm just not going to talk, and I'm going to let you watch. It's about 2 minutes long. We were hoping to walk through the facility last week and get current video of where we're at in the construction process, but the weather got in the way. So you get to see this awesome rendering video. It's still pretty good. It kind of gives you an idea of the facility. So here we go. I want to share with you all, there we go, some of the details of this facility, the spaces. First thing is we talk about classrooms. We call them learning labs quite a bit. You'll see it says wet, dry, and studio. Our classrooms at Vanguard have 3 walls, not 4. It's a very open concept. We have lots of movable furniture. So when you see this, there's 10 learning labs, or you can think of them as classrooms. There's 4 computer labs. We have a maker space. We call it the Hex Lab. Our commons area is called the Hive. We have a manufacturing lab as well. We have 8 collaboration spaces. Our agriculture program in Broken Arrow Public Schools is moving over to Vanguard Academy. So we have some classroom space, and the manufacturing lab is part of the agriculture program. And then we have 3 barns toward the back of the property. It's 80 acres. There's like 2 ponds on the property. It's a really gorgeous place, and we're super excited to share it with Broken Arrow. So let's talk about Vanguard Academy, and we have like 4 foundational differences that are different than a traditional approach. And I want to share those with you first, and then I'm going to turn it over to Emily and Cody, and they're going to talk about those 2 full-time programs. Here are the 4 things that make Vanguard a little bit different than a traditional approach. The first one is we're holistic in our approach to education. The second one is we're competency-based. The third one is we're interdisciplinary in our approach. And the fourth one is we have a high degree of student voice and choice. So I have some slides to kind of dive deeper into these. I know that's kind of a generic slide, so let's kind of fast forward a little bit. When we say holistic, what does that mean? When you think of a typical school experience, students receive a report card, and it might say like algebra in a grade, and we're measuring that academic growth. Our approach is going to be a little bit different. You'll see up here we have kind of 4 areas on the right-hand side: knowledge, skills, creativity, and mindset. So we're measuring students more holistically, more whole, and those are our 4 areas we're really going to focus on. You notice in the very middle of that as well, there's a thing called voice. And really our goal is that when a student walks out of our doors and they've graduated and they're leaving, they know who they are and how they can positively impact the world. That's really the goal. So that holistic approach is a little bit different than a traditional approach, okay? So that's the second thing we have up here is we're competency-based. And I want to share that with you as well. So competency-based compared to a traditional approach is up there. In a competency-based approach, we're going to focus more on what a student can master. A traditional approach typically focuses more on like what a teacher is going to cover in their content area. Make sure I got the right slide. The second difference is we, in a competency-based approach, we focus more on performance assessment, where a traditional approach is going to focus more on a test assessment. In a competency-based approach, we're focused on growth. In a traditional approach, we're focused more on like a grade. Competency-based approach, we're focused on skills and concepts. Traditional approach, we're focused more on knowledge. And then competency-based, we have something called performance level indicators or descriptors. And a traditional approach is one and done. Traditional approach means like, hey, once you cover this in chemistry, like gas laws, we take a test, we move on. We're going to constantly build on those concepts. And I want to show you an example of that. So here's kind of an example of that as well. It's a very generic one. So this is a performance level descriptor. And you might have seen these before in your child's work at their current school. But this is really kind of the tool we're going to use most often is something like this. And you notice across the top there's different levels like not yet, on track, mastery, and exceed. So this is again a generic version of something you'll see quite a bit at Vanguard Academy. And again, we're focused on those competencies and getting students to a mastery level. And let's slow down a little bit here and pause. Let's think about this. We said we're going to have a holistic approach, which is a little different than a traditional school, and we're also going to be competency-based. And when you combine those 2 things, that means you have to also figure out a different way to represent growth to students, families, colleges, stuff like that. So I'm going to quickly show you this transcript. This is a mastery transcript. We're actually going to have 2 transcripts at Vanguard Academy. So for our full-time programming, we'll have a mastery transcript. This will be our main transcript that we use to really show and track growth for students. And we'll also have that traditional transcript because we know that students are going to compete for scholarships and some things like that as well. So we actually will have 2 transcripts. I do want to spend a second here, invest some time with you guys on this. It's a little different approach. In the very middle, you see something that kind of looks like a wheel of a car with spokes. Those spokes are basically, as a school, we get to define what those spokes represent. So this is just an example from another school. But we would build out those areas. You can see that those spokes, some are like bigger and thicker and some are smaller. That shows the growth student has shown in each of those areas. On the very top left corner, there's a space for a student to kind of write like a purpose statement as well. We really like that aspect. And then on the right, you'll see over here it says evidence at the very top right. And then underneath that, students are able to upload evidence of their work. So we feel like this actually shows a lot more depth than a traditional transcript, because you can click on the middle. When you click on the middle piece of the pie or spoke, it brings up evidence on the right, so it's a really cool way to show growth. At the very, very bottom right here, I cut most of it off, it didn't fit. You'll see like transferable skills and arts. Below that, it can also show credits earned. So like a normal transcript, it would still show a credit as well. So just a little bit different way to represent growth when you combine that holistic and competency-based approach. The third thing that we do a little bit differently than most schools is we're interdisciplinary. So I have a graphic for that as well. You see at the very top, that's disciplinary. So that approach is when you go to math class, you learn math. When you're in science class, you learn science. Right below that is multidisciplinary. Multidisciplinary, I'll give you an example of that. That's like a school. Some schools like to do a theme, so their theme might be scuba diving. So when you go to math class, you'll study math, but you'll connect it to scuba diving. When you go to science, you'll study science, but you'll also connect that to scuba diving. That's multidisciplinary. So there's a theme that connects kind of all those disciplines that you're using to connect to your content. We have an interdisciplinary approach, and you'll see the interdisciplinary approach is when you combine contents. Typically at Vanguard, you're going to combine math and science in a class. You're going to combine English and social studies in a class. As students progress and become juniors and seniors, we'll have opportunities to combine like math, science, and English in a class, stuff like that. So that's how we progress. And you notice that bottom part, the bottom convergence on that graphic, that's really where we want to get. We want to get to a place where students are starting to contribute to new knowledge and paradigms. That's kind of like the holy grail for us, so to speak. Awesome. And then the fourth way we're different foundational component is we offer a very high degree of student voice and choice. And there's a graphic for that, and there's a lot of words on it, so I don't want to hit all those words, but here's basically what voice and choice means. We want to give students the opportunity to really kind of determine more what they want to learn, how they want to learn it, and how they can demonstrate they've mastered those concepts or content. So a little bit different approach than a traditional approach is students have a lot more ownership. We like to use the phrase like rent to own. Freshman, sophomore year, they're renting a lot of this, but as they become juniors and seniors, they're owning more of their learning. Okay? So that's the four foundational components of Vanguard Academy that I want to share with you. Before I turn it over to Emily and Cody, I want to quickly show you kind of our three programming options. So the first one is called Expo. Expo is a full-time opportunity for grades 9-12, okay? This is a project-based learning approach. The second opportunity is called BAD Lab. That's short for BA Design Lab. BA Design Lab is also a full-time opportunity for students in grades 9-12. And it uses a human-centered design approach, which is a little bit different, and Cody's going to explain that to you. And then the third opportunity is just innovative electives. It's open for basically 10th, 11th, and 12th grade students at Broken Arrow High School campus that want to come over to Vanguard and take just maybe one class or two classes. So those are the three kind of programming options we're going to share with you guys this evening. I'm going to turn it over to Emily Lim. She's going to talk to you about Expo. Again, at the end of her presentation, we'll have a little time to ask a couple of questions, and then we'll move on to Mr. Pratt, and I'll circle back and talk about innovative electives.
Thank you, Mr. J. So the Expo program, I have been the lead designer on that program, and I am really excited to talk to you about that tonight. Expo stands for exposition. An exposition is a public presentation, much like I'm doing right now. And the students in the Expo program will have a lot of public presentations. It's a full-time project-based learning program. It's a full-time project-based learning program where innovators earn core credits through interdisciplinary courses. These innovators will earn elective credits through experiences focused on exposing, expanding, and exploring. So we expose them to a broad range of topics in their first year, and then we expand their knowledge in those topics during their 10th grade year. The innovators begin to explore those topics that interest them, and then finally, during their senior year, they dive deep into a capstone, and we're going to talk about those topics in just a second. But the fourth year really culminates in a very public exposition where a student takes something that they're passionate about and they invest themselves in a project for their senior year. Let's see. In the first year, I'm going to look through the schedule for a moment. The first year looks something like this. You start out with advisory, and Mr. J is going to talk about advisory in depth in just a few moments. But right after advisory, you're going to go into a science and math project-based learning class. It's about 80 minutes long, and that class will have a math and a science teacher. So when you come home from school, from Vanguard, and your mom asks you, what did you do in science class today? you're going to have to talk about science and math because it's very inclusive and it's very interdisciplinary. So you might create a project that lasts 6 or 9 weeks that covers both math and science. The next class that you'll go to is an outward bound class. I'm super excited about that because we're going to be able to hit some biology standards and some environmental science standards, as well as leadership and collaboration. We're going to have some outdoor experiences such as archery, fishing, kayaking, and rock climbing. Leadership and collaboration will naturally fit into these outdoor experiences. After Outward Bound, we'll have some lunch there on campus, and then you'll move into an English language arts social studies block. So that's your problem-based learning where you might be doing Oklahoma history, geography, government, economics, as well as English. We're going to front load a lot of credits for your high school graduation. So in your first year, we're going to be covering biology standards, primarily Algebra 1, but we're also going to be touching on chemistry, physical science, and geometry. Same thing with the ELA social studies. We're primarily going to be focusing on Oklahoma history and English 1, but we're going to hit some English 2 standards that you wouldn't normally get until your second year of high school. Intro to Expo is the next class I want to talk to you guys about. I'm so excited about this. This is an introduction to all of the equipment at Vanguard. I think you saw on that video that there is a makerspace as well as a welding lab and a construction lab that we call our ag production lab, manufacturing lab. So the Intro to Expo class will teach you how to use 3D printers, laser cutters, CNC mill machines, welding and woodworking equipment. And this will enable students to create physical prototypes for solving problems later in their education. I always get asked for an example, so I'm going to talk about an example of a project where maybe you have to create a sci-fi creature for a science fiction movie. Now, your freshman year is normally all biology, and I've taught biology and I've taught chemistry in the past. I know all the biology standards. I know that I need to teach you about photosynthesis. I need to teach you about biomes and ecosystems and animal adaptations. So what if I taught you that through the lens of creating a sci-fi creature for a movie? So we work for 6 or 9 weeks, and you have to completely develop this sci-fi creature for me. You have to tell me, does it inhale oxygen and exhale carbon dioxide, or does it inhale sulfur dioxide because the planet that this creature is from only has sulfur dioxide in its atmosphere? What's the gravity in this creature's ecosystem? Is it a predator or is it prey? So we're going to move through a lot of those biology standards, and it's going to feel a little bit less like you're reading from a textbook and learning about genetics, whereas you're going to be designing a creature for a science fiction movie. Now, at the end of this project, you have had some experience with laser cutting and 3D printing, so you actually need to create your creature. So now it's time for you to knit or crochet or sew a 3-dimensional animal that's your creature. You could also go into the computer lab and you could animate it. So let's say that producing something 3-dimensional is not your thing and you'd rather go in and 3-dimensionally animate your creature for a sci-fi. You can do that. You could 3D print your creature for a sci-fi movie. So you have to create your creature at the end of this project, and then you have to have an exposition where you have to publicly present to your class, to your classmates, maybe to classmates that are not in your class. You have to tell us about your sci-fi creature. You have to talk about its ecosystem, its biomes, all of the things that as a teacher I would expect to make sure that you've mastered in those biology standards, and you would be able to move through that presentation, and I would be able to use a rubric to assess whether you know the content or not. So that's a really lengthy example of a project. All right, we're going to move into the second year. The second year looks something like this. We still have an ELA Social Studies PBL. We still have a Science and Math PBL. We no longer have that Outward Bound class, but we do have 2 electives now and an Expose class. Expose is going to expose you to these 9 focus areas. And one thing I didn't mention on the first year and the second year is this last class, which is an elective. We heard from lots of parents in the district, whenever we created these committees, that arts are very important to you, athletics are very important to you, and parents wanted the opportunity for their child to go back to the high school or go back to BAFA for that last hour of the day and be able to participate in band or art or show choir or football. And so this last hour of the day in every year is still available to you to go back to the high school and take an elective. One thing that we're not offering, and I'll go through that in our credits in a minute, is we're not offering a foreign language. So if you know that your student wants Spanish 1 and 2, this will be a perfect time for them to go back to the high school or take it virtually and still stay on the Vanguard campus but take a virtual elective. All right, in the third year, we take those 9 understands the iterative process on working through a project and solving a problem. And so by the time they are in their third year, they're owning their projects more. We're less of doling that out and saying, create a sci-fi creature, and they're being able to create their own projects for themselves, which culminates in their fourth year, which is a capstone project, where students dive deep into an immersive capstone experience. Again, you have some electives. What we have done is we have really front-loaded the credits so that you can have most of your senior year where you are focusing on your capstone, or if your passion project, if you will. A few examples of that are Mr. Pratt's working on a project with NASA involving battle drones. We have a food desert problem in North Tulsa. Maybe you want to tackle that your senior year. Perhaps you want to make a prosthetic for some BA students who might need that. You have all the tools available to you in Vanguard to create a prosthetic. Maybe you want to work with the city of BA in a partnership. They're trying to get us to build a bridge over a waterway. Maybe you want to go for the Carbon Capture X Prize. So those are just some examples of what you might do during your capstone experience your senior year. The next slide talks about credits needed to graduate versus credits that we have available to you. As you'll see on the right, we have more credits than you need to graduate. We are going to give you plenty of computer science credits. You could actually use those in place of foreign language, but many students want both. So again, you can go back to the high school and earn those foreign language credits and safely being able to get your computer science credits. We're going to cover astronomy, environmental science, physics. If I get my way, and Mr. J lets me, I'm going to create a physics of rock climbing so we can explore terminal velocity and pulleys and simple machines as it relates to rock climbing. So who is ideal for the Expo program? This is very similar to the other. We are in it for students who are hungry for a different school experience, students who are interested in science, technology, engineering, and math, and students who are interested in design. The creative thinker, the student who maybe has a different path to an answer in a class, a student who wants to present their knowledge in a different way, a kind of a non-traditional way. Can art and athletic students participate? Is it NCAA? Yes. The answer is yes to both of those. It works for most arts and most athletics. The two groups that it doesn't work for are Tyget and Cheer, because their class is first hour, and we just don't have that in our schedule. Ours, the elective would be last hour. And transportation and meals, it's a regular BA high school. So you're going to have busing, your parents can drop you off. We're going to have a meal service over there in that 2-story atrium that we're calling the Hive. By the way, I have to talk about the Hive for a moment. It's got really high ceilings, and we can have a drone course in there. In that 2-story, it's very much this high. We have winches that come down from the ceiling on a remote control, and I can put hula hoops on that and send it back up, and I can create a drone flying course for a competition right there in that 2-story atrium. We also have a drop wall in there that has metered marks. So everybody's probably done an egg drop challenge where they had to create something to help an egg not break. So if you were to drop an egg from this drop wall, you could video that, and as it falls, you could see it in slow-mo go past 1 meter, 2 meter, 3 meter, and you could actually find out the velocity of how many meters per second that egg is falling. So that is a pretty interesting use of space. What diploma will my child receive upon graduation? The same diploma that they would receive if they were at BA high school. We're considering doing something a little special for our Vanguard kids in 4 years, but we're pretty excited about the credits that they'll earn. All right, how do you apply? We're going to take 50 8th graders and 50 current 9th graders who will then become entering as 9th and 10th graders. This is the only year that we will be taking 10th graders who are current 9th graders. From this point forward, we will have an entering freshman class that will move through for 4 years and matriculate up. So this will be the only year that the entry point is a sophomore level. So I heard some people coming in the front door tonight who said they were from BAFA, and you'll probably have some questions on what the 2 through the 2nd through the 4th year looks like. And basically, you've already had some credits. You've already had biology, so I'm not going to put you through those biology credits again. We're going to custom craft your sophomore year so that we can front load some chemistry and some physics credits so that we can move on. Another big question is, my kid is already accelerated in math. So what's that mean for my kid? Unfortunately, that probably means that we're going to be redoing some of the math standards that your kid has already had. However, we have the ability to really tailor this so that we're still challenging them in that area. But they won't be receiving a higher math credit. They'll still be receiving maybe Algebra 1 again, or maybe Geometry again. It's open to all students. The applications are open right now. And there's an application and an interview. We should know by mid-April who our 50 kids from 8th grade and 50 kids from 9th grade are. And now I'm going to move to questions. But first I'm going to tell you to take 30 seconds to a minute and turn and talk and tell your neighbor what you learned, what you came in not knowing, but now you know, and then I'm going to take your questions. All right, turn and talk. Okay, you guys, you're much quieter than when we have turn and talks in class. What questions can I answer for you guys? If you have that question, somebody else probably does. Yes?
So you mentioned the foreign language and the athletics. Do those conflict with one another? Is it possible to do the 6-hour athletics as well as the foreign language, or is it a choice between the two?
It is your second year. Your first year, you will only have one elective your first year, your freshman year. Okay. Yes.
Calculus? Do you hit calculus?
Yes, we do. We do hit calculus. It'll be your 4th year. In my program, it'll be your 4th year. Yes.
How does this affect like a GPA for grade scores for college?
We're going to have to convert that amazing mastery transcript to a traditional transcript where we assign you a GPA and a ranking. So your student will be ranked with the regular high school population. Yeah. Yes.
And this is probably a bad question, but
There's no bad questions.
so given that they're still going to be evaluated on SAT scores for entrance,
Mm-hmm.
how is this program going to still prepare them in a more traditional? I mean, because
It's a very valid question, and it's not a bad question. It's a question we get asked a lot, actually. So I'm going to repeat that back for anybody who's listening in online. How can a program that teaches in a project-based learning that doesn't have multiple choice tests prepare students for a multiple choice world where you have to take an SAT or an ACT to get into school? We have plans to do some of these electives that we're going to offer are going to be ACT and SAT prep classes. Mr. Pratt's program actually has an SAT, ACT prep class focused on the junior year. But it is a very valid question, and I've been in project-based learning for a dozen years or so, and the question always becomes, if you're teaching in a project-based manner, you need to evaluate in a project-based manner, but it doesn't prepare you for a multiple choice test. We hope that our students will still be able to test well. We're new. we're starting this endeavor. This has never before existed at Broken Arrow, but we have some data from some other schools that says their students get into great colleges and their students do pretty well on the SAT and the ACT. We don't really know, and we're going to do our best to prepare you for that. But teaching your kids to think in a different way doesn't really, it doesn't translate well to taking a multiple choice test. The example I gave all day today at Centennial was, do you want to get into a plane with a pilot who did really well on a multiple choice test and knows Bernoulli's principle very, very well? Or do you want to get into a plane with a pilot who's had some hands-on learning, who actually knows how to fly that plane? So we're actually trying to prepare students to fly the plane and not be able to just do really well on the multiple choice test. That's a good question, and it's a valid concern, yes.
Will there be transportation available to the high school and to the freshman academy?
Yes.
Okay, because I was like, are we?
No. There will be a shuttle if you're just coming over for an elective, and then there's going to be a bus going back if you're going back to the high school for an elective. Yes. Good question. Yes. Okay. I sure will. So that was a two-part question. What are the requirements to apply? What does that application look like? And two, if you get into it and it's not for you, what are your options? So the first question about applying is we have a really simple application process. You will answer some questions that are just short answer. So we would love complete sentences, and we would love for you to answer them honestly. And the application is fairly short. It also tells us what school you're from, so we can call and maybe talk to your teachers. And we don't really accept letters of recommendation, but we'll probably talk to your principal. We'll probably talk to your teachers about you. One thing that we ask on the application process, but it's not required, is that you shoot a 60 to 90 second video of yourself. You upload it to your Google Drive, and you send us a link. So we would really like to see your face without mask and have you talk to us for 60 to 90 seconds about why you think you'd be a good fit for Vanguard, or if you just want to tell us a story. But we want to get to know you. Mr. J is going to talk, he talked about relationships. He's going to talk more about relationships, but we want to get to know your student. And we think a 60 to 90 second video will help us to get to know your student. Someone asked me today at Centennial, do you have to have straight A's to get in? No. It's not necessarily the straight A student that we're looking for. There were a lot of students today at Centennial that immediately turned me off. I could see it on their faces. When I came in to talk to them about options, they immediately thought, I don't have options. I'm a C student, I don't have options. You do have options. You do have the opportunity to come here, because maybe the type of learning and the type of teaching that you've been experiencing is not where you're most successful. Maybe Vanguard is where you'd be most successful. So we really encourage everyone who is even remotely interested in this to apply. All right, I think I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Pratt, and there'll be more questions later, and we'll have the opportunity to go around the room and stand and answer questions at the end. All right, get you set up.
All right, good evening, everybody. I'm Mr. Pratt. I am the lead designer for the BAD Lab, which is the Broken Arrow Design Lab. It's the human-centered design approach. Now, when I say that, people are kind of like, well, what really is that? That's where it's this program and the Expo program have a lot of similarities, but there's a few very big differences. And this really is it. This is the crux of it. This is very philanthropic. This is solving problems. This is solving issues. This is giving ownership to the students to actively go out and shape the world that they're going to inherit once they graduate from high school and make it a better place. And this human-centered design process, it was developed by Stanford, but it's an approach to problem solving. And that develops solutions to problems by involving that human perspective in every single aspect of that iterative process. I'll go into that a little bit more later, but that is the nuts and bolts of that. So how do they earn their credits? There are 3 main ways in the BAD Lab for these innovators to earn their credits, and they're all pretty unique. The first one is a fusion. The fusion is a math-science combination as well, but it's more through the stream of life. And what I mean by the stream of life is, I don't know if you've ever said it as a student when you were younger, or you've heard somebody else say it like, bro, when am I ever going to use this? Okay, we're going to take that out of the equation, and we're going to involve that math and science through practical application. So an example of a fusion would be going out into the 80 acres that we have, obviously looked over or whatever, and shooting a bow, okay? So now you have shot a bow or an arrow. Now you can use your math and your science aspect of looking at that through the quadratic equation. Let's graph the trajectory of that. Or looking at the physics of that and studying the velocity and the speed. So it's really in the field. So then we go into our kinetic. That's also a math and science. But it's like a lab, but it's not like a lab that anybody knows or has seen before. This is a very active lab. It's very, an example I guess would be, has anybody seen those Mark Rober YouTube clips where he creates those glitter bombs for the porch pirates? So like they steal the porch, or the, whatever it is, the package off the porch, they get it home, and he opens it up and it just explodes glitter everywhere, and like fart spray smell, and like it starts video recording, and it's all upload live. Building something like that. Or there's also an aspect of like some competition with this as well. Let's say we'll put them in teams, small teams or small groups. We'll give them 4 fire hydrants, some masking tape, and something else, and be like, all right, your objective now as a group is to create a hovercraft. And you have 10 days to do it, and then we're going to see who can get from this point of the room to that point of the room first. And it's a competition, but it's not like the competition that would like leave anybody feeling bad. It's a fun kind of experience there. And then third is our immersion. So that is the English language arts and the social studies combination. And how we're going to approach this one is an immersion is you're really going to immerse yourself in that, but you get to choose what lens you're going to approach that as. I guess an example would be we worked really closely with a school in Idaho called One Stone, and we reached out and we spoke with a third, or I think she might have been a 4th year. And we asked her, what's that immersion experience like? So she explained that the election 2020 was coming up, and her lens that she wanted to explore the English language arts and social studies through was, is America really ready for a female president? And so she tackled that English language arts social studies through that lens. And so she studied female leaders from across the globe. And then once she got that data, she then took another deeper dive down, and then she looked at the geopolitical and the social and the economical aspect of that. And then she took it down even another level. And then she created a presentation. And then at the end of that, she did a public presentation to the stakeholders and to her teachers and showed that mastery. So that's an example of an immersion as well. And the 3rd and 4th year, there's design experiences. They have a lot of student voice and choice. So like Emily said earlier, we're going to front load a lot of the core credits in their high school experience to open up the opportunities for them to really dig into the human-centered design aspect of this in their 3rd and 4th year. That student voice and choice, that is a pretty big differentiating factor as well, and it gets pretty gnarly, and I'm going to dive into that and that aspect with the Bad Lab momentarily. Okay, so the 1st year experience. If you look up here, we're going to be on a block schedule. That's just going to be like an A day and then a B day. So the first A day, you would come in, like every other day you'll start with advisory. And we have a pretty robust advisory, and it's sometimes the vibe of saying the word advisory in this district kind of leaves a weird taste in your mouth, but this is very different. And JJ's going to talk a lot more about that, and it really is the crux of the whole school Vanguard. So we'll start every day with that advisory. And then on A day, we'll go into that fusion. Then we'll go into that intro to Bad Lab, which is similar to the intro to the Expo, where you just kind of you kind of learn the ropes of this human-centered design. It's a process, and it takes a while. Then they'll have some lunch. Then they'll go into that Outward Bound, which is like the gnarliest elective I've ever heard of in my life. All that kayaking, rock climbing, fishing, all that good stuff. And then they'll go into their electives, which basically leaves them open for arts and athletics as well, mostly. Go into the year 2 experience there. The big difference here is they're still on that block schedule, A and B, is after lunch, they'll have their intro to design, their first design rotation. So we're now in year 2. So we're gonna have year 2, 3, and 4 left. So let's think of that like this. This will be their crawl phase. The next year would be their walk phase, and then their senior year would be their run phase with their own designs. We're gonna introduce them to entrepreneurship. We have partner cafes, we are linked up with lots of businesses. That's another thing we want to do. We want to help the people around us, the businesses around us, the globe. We don't have to think small. We can think huge. So we want to partner with everybody. And then we have Project Good, which is just like an opportunity to do something kind for somebody else and really get that empathetic approach for a person. And then we have the Pay It Forward. That's an opportunity to help the district. Maybe that is you want to, and you're passionate about, go and help mentor special needs students at elementaries. That's an opportunity to pay it forward internally, as the Project Good is a little more externally. When we go to year 3, same block schedule here. For the design, this is their walk design, the walk phase. Remember, we were crawl, walk, run, now they're walking. So an example of that walk design would be, obviously, with faculty with them, partnering with Broken Arrow neighbors and city officials, and addressing the issue of local food deserts, or maybe regional, spread out a little more. Find those food deserts, and then create a plan for making community gardens that is scalable, something that can continue to thrive, and then ending with actually building those community gardens that are scalable. So that would be like a walk phase design, year 2. And also you'll notice on Monday, they're gonna have that intro, they're gonna be exposed to the ACT and the SAT prep for their junior year. All right, our 4th year, again, start with advisory. Then they're gonna go into a block of design prep. And then they'll go into their 4th seminar there on A day, go into their design, into their elective. The B day, design prep, immersion, lunch, their design, and then electives. But why do we need design prep? There is a ton of logistics and collaboration that goes involved with the human-centered design process. Literally, you want to embed yourself with the stakeholders of which you're trying to solve a problem for. And how do you do that? You have to communicate with them. You have to go see them. You have to walk a mile in their shoes. So that takes coordination. And that's where that design prep comes in, is setting up everything you're going to do when you come back from lunch or next week. And you could stagger it out. However you need to do it, that's how it will be done. After lunch, you'll come back, then you'll do your design. And then you'll also have your electives there after that. Oh, thank you. I didn't move the slides, did I? Emily Lim, thank you very much. I knew I was missing something. All right, so the design experience here. They have a blank slate. This is a beautiful thing, because what are you passionate about? Everybody's passionate about something different. And in using that human-centered design approach, maybe they want to start a business. Awesome, dude. Let's do it. Let's get you an LLC. Let's actually get you making money. Let's write a real business plan. Let's find investors. We can do that. The BA Neighbors Partnership, another example. We got you. We will do everything we can to help coordinate what it is you're passionate about and start letting you make moves that will positively affect your life and lives around you. It really is, it's limitless. So, much like the Expo program here, the credits earned are on the far right there. You'll notice it's still more than the regular graduation requirements. I think there's 2 less math in the Bad Lab than there is in the Expo. But other than that, you're going to get every credit you need to graduate from high school and more. Who is the ideal candidate for a Bad Lab? Look, it could be anybody. What do you want to pursue? What do you want to change? Are you curious? Are you empathetic? Do you want to be a positive change agent for the world around you or the community around you? You're a great fit. And the athletic students, arts and athletics, absolutely. Come on, we encourage everybody to apply. It's the same with the Expo. There might be some nuances there that we might need to find workarounds with, and that's okay. And then transportation and meals, it's Broken Arrow Public Schools. Meals provided, transportation provided. So for the diploma, same thing. You will get the same standard diploma. I do think it's important that we differentiate ourselves because I do think we're very different from the traditional path. Whether that be an internal ceremony or it be an extra, maybe they get a sash or satchel or what are those called at graduation? A stall, yeah. Something like that. But yes, your student will get a standard diploma as well. Here's where it gets gnarly. This is the big differentiating factor. We're going to have an internal board of directors, and this is not a drill. This is a real board of directors, internally. It's going to have 2/3 students, and then the rest is going to be comprised of faculty and community members. And what are we going to do with that? Well, we're going to figure out where we're going, what our next steps are, what our next projects are, where do they need us, what can we do, how can we help? And also solving some internal not problems, but internal questions that we may have. How do we stay at the tip of that innovative spear? This is how. We involve the students. By the way, we involved the students in literally this entire process, and that's how we ended up here, including designing that building. So it will require an acceptance, an application, and interview, the exact same as the Expo. It is actually the same application. At some point, you just get the opportunity to list your preference. You know, would you prefer Expo or would you prefer Bad Lab? And then you can also, if you could go to either. And we're going to be accepting. We're going to be half the size of the Expo. We're going to have 25 incoming freshmen and 25 incoming sophomores. And just like Expo as well, this is the last year we'll take incoming sophomores. And we're open to all students. We have some flexibility with arts, athletics, we do, but please apply. If you're thinking about it, if you think you're not, I don't know, everybody can do it. You just gotta believe. So we'll do the questions thing here. So 30 seconds. Turn and talk to somebody next to you. What did you learn about this Bad Lab that you didn't know when you walked in here? And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to field some questions. All right. Does anybody have any questions? There's no stupid questions. And this is huge anyways. Like, please ask your questions. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. Probably applies to both programs, but since this is
That's a really good question. She asked, since this is such a unique experience, the pool of teachers and students, what kind of extra training would go into that? And so, actually, yeah, Mr. J, you want to go ahead and take that?
The phrase I like to use a lot is we want people that are running towards something and not away from something, both on the student and staff side. So there are people in Broken Arrow High School and middle schools, we've talked to a couple teachers today, they're looking for something different, right? And those are the people we're really seeking to be on staff. And then same thing for students. We're not looking for a kid that goes, oh, I just don't like this, so maybe if I go over there it's better. No, right? We're looking for somebody that goes, dude, I love that, right? I want to be the kid that's partnering to build a prosthetic or something like that. So both for the student and staff, that's kind of our approach is let's find people that are running towards something instead of away from something. Training? Yeah, so we're loaded up on training. Yeah, we're spending a lot of money on training. Luckily, we have a grant. Mrs. Lim got this really awesome grant from the Schusterman Foundation, so they're fantastic partners. And we've already had one training for PBL Works. It's a project-based learning training, 3 days. We're going to do another one of those. We're training with a lady named Lauren Anderson, who worked in Arkansas and Seattle, now is back in Little Rock, does some really good stuff. We have some outdoor education training we've got to go to. So, yeah, we have to do a lot of training, right? Because remember, we're building this stuff from scratch. So there's a lot of work to do here, and that'll happen over the summer as well. You're welcome.
It's a great question. Anything else? Sir? That's a great question. And what he had asked was, how do students decide what they're interested in? I mean, at the end of the day, they are like 14, 15, right? That is our job as mentors and coaches to a degree, to help expose them to the world that's around them and all of the things that are available to them. And then also to help them build their ownership. That's another key product of our program as a whole, as Vanguard. And Mr. Jadamski, he'll get into that a little bit later as well, about that ownership and that advisory. But we're developing students to have a real, genuine understanding of themselves and the world around them, and obviously in phases, first year, second year, third year, fourth year. I don't know if that genuinely answered your question, but I don't know how else I can clarify this. Their ownership will help drive that, and our ability and our desire to expose them to the world around them should do that to a degree. Anything else? Ma'am? So that's a great question. Yeah, advisory as well. We're very in tune with families and staff. And ma'am, did you have a question?
I know that this concept is new to Broken Arrow. Are there similar schools in-state that are following this model? So what are you using to gauge how these students then transition, those that want to go for higher education, how they transition back into a traditional learning environment like most colleges are?
That's a great question. What she had asked was, since this is such a unique experience, who have we used to kind of bounce our ideas off of, and if there was any in-state? The answer is there are not any in-state, but we did coordinate greatly with the Oklahoma State Department of Education, and we also found schools that were not in-state, and we collaborated with them to a great degree. And kind of like Mrs. Lim was saying earlier as well, with the question for the Expo, is they are going to be problem solvers and initiative takers. And so the ability to adapt to a new environment will not be new to them. And also in the Bad Lab program specifically, we have the ACT and the SAT prep built in on that third year experience. You're welcome. Any other questions, please? Sir.
There's a little bit of the high school experience that you still want our son to have, like they have pep rallies and those kind of things over at the big school. Do they go feel part of the bigger student body?
That is a wonderful question, and thank you for asking that. His question was, if his student is involved in the Vanguard, will they still be able to get that high school experience with the pep rallies and the dances and whatnot? And the answer is yes. We are still Broken Arrow Public Schools. We're separated, but we're all one still at the same time. But absolutely, those opportunities are important to students and also to parents and staff and everything. JJ, you ready? Thank you guys so much.
Awesome. So let's take you just real fast to innovative electives. So we said there's 2 full-time programs, 1 part-time program. Here's the part-time program. It's for grades 10, 11, 12 only. And next year we have 4 offerings. And most likely we're going to rotate these every year. We're probably going to offer the same thing. Outward Bound we might offer every year. It's going to be a pretty popular program, but the other ones will probably rotate a little bit. So you can see there's a class called Enlighten, which is a renewable energy class we're offering next year for 10th, 11th, and 12th graders. There's that drone class that Mr. Pratt's working on with NASA, the Battle Drone Program. We're going to offer that next year as well. We're going to offer a class, Intro to Careers and Technology. It's kind of an exploration class in technology solutions and careers that feed into, and then that Outward Bound class, the kayaking, fly fishing class will be another elective option. So again, that's for 10, 11, 12. There's no application if you go to Broken Arrow High School. I mean, some of y'all are having vision problems. You don't see yourself going to Vanguard full time, right? So maybe you're at Broken Arrow High School and you're like, hey, I'd love to take a class. That's your opportunity to go take a class at Vanguard. We just run a shuttle back and forth from Broken Arrow High School during those hours to transport kids over. It's a quarter mile, right? They go take a class and they just take another shuttle back to get back to Broken Arrow High School. So again, that's for 10, 11, 12th. I want to touch on this advisory thing. We talked about it a little bit. I know we had some questions. So something that I feel like will also separate this experience from a lot of traditional school experiences are advisory. And a lot of schools do advisory. So it's not just so much that we have an advisory, it's what we do with our advisory. And we have 3 kind of focal points in our advisory. The first one is connection. The second one is adult springboard. And the third one is wayfinding. So let's talk about this connection one first. A little background about me. So I've been in education a long time, but I've been a speaker the last couple of years as well. So last couple of years I was speaker full time, and I came back to BA for this role. And my focus as a speaker was literally take 200 kids in a gym for 6 hours and help them recognize they have a lot more in common than they do different. So our advisory, we're going to focus on building connections between students. I have a friend named Karen that lives in North Carolina. Her son was a junior 2 years ago. They're walking through a Walmart parking lot. Her son's name's Ben. They see a kid about Ben's age walking the other way, and Ben looked at him and said, hey, and the kid said, hey, and Karen goes, hey, who's that guy? He goes, oh, it's a dude from math class. She goes, what's his name? Ben goes, I don't know. It was April. They'd been in the same class since August, and they didn't know each other's names. I can guarantee you that will not happen on our campus. Our goal is to connect students with each other so they know names, but they also know stories. My friend Phil, he's a speaker named Phil Boyd, real popular speaker in the education world. He saw a shirt about 20 years ago that said, it's hard to hate somebody whose story you know. I love that phrase. So our goal is to get students to a place where they're friendly. They don't have to be friends with everybody on campus, but where they're friendly. They know people's names, they know people's stories. On the parent side, the family side, we want to build a really strong connection. We feel like the best way to support your child is have a really good connection with the home. So a couple of things we'll do different is we're going to do a home visit through advisory. Our advisory teachers, that freaks people out. They're like, you're coming to my house? Well, okay, maybe you haven't cleaned it yet, so maybe we'll meet you at Starbucks, okay? But our goal is to build a relationship with your family. That's what we feel like we're able to best support your child. Part of this is also when your child's absent from school, you will not call the front desk. You will actually contact the advisory teacher to communicate that your child's going to be gone. Okay. Another thing we're going to do, there's an app called Marco Polo. I think my phone's in this pocket. Really simple video app called Marco Polo. You just pull it out and click a little button. Actually, I did one I don't want to say I did one on the way here. I did one on the way here because you can drive and hit the button. It just records. It's awesome. And so I can talk and just drive and send my friend a message in South Carolina who's a principal there. It's pretty awesome. We're going to use that with parents. So our goal is at least once a week you're getting a video message from campus, from an adult, saying, hey, just touching base about your child. This is what they were doing this week. I saw them really thriving, or they were struggling, or checking on this. And then you have the ability to send a video back. It's pretty awesome. So that's a tool we're going to utilize differently so we can maintain that connection between the school and the house. All right, so there's the first part, connection. Second part is adult springboard. That's like washing and drying clothes and changing a tire and tying a tie and setting a table. First time I ever had to wash and dry clothes, I was at Missouri State University, took my clothes and my quarters. I went downstairs to the basement in the dorm. I was super excited to do my laundry, and I didn't know how. So I stood there for a little bit looking around going, what are they doing? Oh, that's how you do it. Okay, cool, right? And that's how I learned. My parents are awesome people. It's just nothing, something they never taught me, right? So we're going to make sure students have those skills. And the last thing, and probably the most important thing, is this wayfinding piece. We want to help students define what their purpose is and then figure out how to live congruent with that purpose. We feel like they're going to be happier and healthier adults if they really have a defined purpose and they know how to live incongruent with that purpose. Some are all like, dude, I'm 45, and yeah, I agree, right? So that's our goal with the wayfinding process. And it's a process. They're not going to decide as a freshman and it's going to be locked in, right? It's part of this is understanding that's a process to start defining what your purpose is and figure out how to live congruent with that and how to be fulfilled as a person by living with that purpose. Okay, so that is our advisory program, and we feel like that is also a different approach as well to advisory with these 3 focal points. Cool, that takes us to the end. All right, so look, there's 3 steps here. So either if you're in the audience or if you're watching from home. First one over here, if you're in person with us, we're going to break out around some tables in the room here in a second. If you have a question or two, come and connect with us, right? We'll have a conversation and answer your questions. If you are like, man, I need a deep conversation, or if you're watching from home, you can send me an email. That's step number 2. It's jjadamski@baschools.org. You send me an email. We'll figure out a time to connect on the phone. I would much rather prefer have a conversation with you on the phone than send 20 emails back and forth. Sometimes things get lost in translation on email, and sometimes when I answer something, it creates another question, right? And so let's just get on the phone and we'll figure out a time that we can have a conversation, because our goal is to help you make the best decision possible for your child. And then option number 3 is go and apply. So on the back of that handout that's at the back of the room, there's a QR code. You just scan it, it takes you right to our application. You fill it out and complete it. Applications open right now. They close March 12th. And I think Mrs. Lim and Mr. Pratt kind of hit on like, hey, our goal is interview maybe a couple kids before spring break, interview most students after spring break, and make decisions by mid-April is our goal. All right. So first, thank you so much for investing time and learning more about Vanguard. Worst case is you invested about an hour here and it's not for you when you leave, but at least you can mark one thing off your list, right? If you showed up and you saw something, you're like, dude, I really like that. Let's have a deeper conversation or go apply. Let's take the next step. Okay, that's the goal. So again, hang out if you want to talk. We'll spread out and you can ask questions. If you're at home or you want a deeper conversation, email me, jjadamski@baschools.org, or you can go apply. Thank you all so much for coming and attending tonight's Vanguard Forum. We appreciate it.